Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Release Valve. I am your host, Sean Hanlon, and I'm joined again by my other host, my brother from another mother, Kyle Spain. Welcome back, sir, and happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, my man. Happy Father's Day. How is life treating you these days?
Yeah, good, because I choose to let it be good. You know what I'm saying? For quite some time, I would allow those, and we talked about it before, those exterior variables to come into my equation and dictate the flow of my day, the feel of my day, affect my vibes in a negative way, and use it as the excuse as to why things aren't good. And like we've talked about it before, no more bad days. No more bad days. And I had a real big test the other day, work-wise, and I almost let it affect me to that degree. And it was one of those things I just had to kind of self-reflect a little bit. And I reminded myself, I was like, nah, this is just a bad moment of the day. But the day in and of itself was not bad. I had, especially at the start of the day, my vibes were flowing positive. I was beaming energy, and I was picking up other people's energies in a good way, and I was feeling good. And then something happened with work that it almost got to me. But again, self-reflection is so important, and really asking ourselves what the issue is, right? What is it that's really bothering us? And it wasn't life in and of itself. So it's all good, man. Everything's good with me.
Man, there's just a different way of living, a different way of responding to things, man. And
Right.
it's crazy because, as we're continuing on this journey of, mental and mindset growth, a journey of healing, right? There's a different side of things, man, and a lot of us have this pre-programming, like response to triggers, or triggers that subconscious triggers, just how we're just naturally or habitually respond to when things happen.
Right.
And literally before we just came on, right, were just talking about disruption follows intention, and we've talked about this before as far as perfect days, right? We had a podcast talking about perfect days and how subconsciously we just don't expect or pay attention to things to go wrong. And within that, responding to those things as negative, and then allowing it to affect our days, and then now our days, it snowballs, right? And then everything else, and then this is wrong, and then that is wrong.
Yeah.
And,
of course, this is going to happen. Of course, this. Of course, that. That's par for the course. That was Unhappy Island. Unhappy Island was the episode, right?
Yes. So I agree with you, bro. I'm at the point now to where I've become more aware, or more conscious, because we're aware of things, but we don't necessarily put things into practice, and so it kind of just falls to the wayside, gets brushed under the rug, not intentionally, but it's not something that we practice or we rep, so it doesn't become a habit, and so then it kind of gets lost in the sauce. But knowing that when you start to do good, when you initially have that intention to be better, to do well, to be better in this world, the enemy is right around the corner to disrupt that, to throw you off your energy.
Waiting.
Right? It's just like boom, just waiting for you to hit
feeling
that
good?
corner.
All right, here we go.
Exactly, right? And so practicing peace and becoming positive has been life-changing. It's been transformative, man. Repping, and like I said, putting into practice how we actually respond to things is it's attracting. I had wrote down the other day that energy is contagious. Energy is influential, and it's impactful, man. So to pretend, however, whatever we're feeling, like you said, an emotional regulation and checking how we're feeling is extremely important for our livelihood, just for our peace and our happiness, man. And so getting to a point to where it's like, okay, everything is happening for a reason. Everything is happening for my growth. It's just going to allow you to continue to chug along versus You know, that debilitating feeling of feeling like, man, like, why me, poor me, and just that
Right.
victimized mindset, you know. So
Yeah.
no more bad days, man. No more bad days. And if there is a bad day, of what quote may seem like a bad day, what can we learn from it? You know, that self-reflection, like what, because I've found that I've learned that you find more to gain, or there's more gain in what went wrong versus what went right. There's more to learn, and when you have the focus of, okay, what was the lesson out of this? What can I get better from? How can I learn from this? It just completely changes the game, and it always just allows me to move forward in action, even though, you know, still working on consistency, because consistency is key. But it just it's changed my world, bro. It's changed my world.
100%, man. It changes the way you look at the world, right? It changes the way, you know, like you said, you know, kind of like when you level up, you know, new levels, new devils. And when you have that self awareness and you're doing that self reflection, like we talked about, you know, when those new devils come into play, if you are conscious of what the situation is, you know, you're aware of the attacks that are coming onto you. You know, like even like how you said before you jumped on, you know, you had your ring light go out and you had to laugh. You know, that
Has
easily could have been a moment of just like, oh, great, you know, here we go. You
right.
know,
I'm not going to
I
be able to
knew something was going
record.
to happen. You know, yeah,
Yeah,
and you could have shut down from that. You know, and rightfully so, because you know that you're not getting that perfect product that you saw ahead of time, right? You know, I'm going to jump on, everything's going to work out well. You have that kind of subconscious feeling of everything's going to be picture perfect, like we talked about on that episode. And then as soon as it's not, like, all right, that's it. You know, can't do it. You know, it's not what I wanted it to be. It's not, you know, going to be the best product or whatever the case is. And nah, you didn't fold, man. You assessed the situation for what it was. That it was just one of those moments, but it wasn't going to take away from what it was that you were setting out to do. It didn't have to. It doesn't have to. You
it
know, and,
doesn't
and,
have
and
to.
that's one of the big things for me was, again, not allowing those moments to dictate how my entire day went or is going or whatever the case was. It was a big attack that I had the other day, and I for longer than I would have liked, I allowed it to really have that negative effect. And again, I just had that moment of self reflection of like, nah, the day as a whole was not bad. It really wasn't. If I go back and look at how my morning started, how the flow of the day went, it really was not a bad day. So I can't chalk this up because this big heavy moment, you know, this big setback took away from it. You know, again, I get brought back to the story, the tale of the two dads. You know, and they're riding with their sons in their car, and each dad, you know, blows a tire. And the one dad gets all bent out of shape, you know, of course, why me? He starts swearing, you know, flipping out and all this and stuff. And the kid in the back seat is watching that. And then you have the other dad blows the tire and he says, all right, son, time to learn how to change a tire. You know what I'm saying? Like there's
Yeah, bro.
that it's all a matter of how, excuse me, it's all a matter of how you respond to it. And again, one of my favorite quotes, I've said it on here so many times, and I apologize for the avid listeners that have heard me say it. But it's, if you can't control the situation at hand, control how you respond to it, and that's where your power lies. And again, I'm gonna keep on saying that because it's such an important lesson that we can all learn from and continue to learn from. Even though we've heard it so many times, we're still gonna have those moments of feeling overwhelmed, of feeling like the world is against us. You know, that we're going against the grain of our own lives. And now there's no matter what the situation is, in just about every single situation that arises in our lives, we can dictate how we respond to it, and that can completely change the outcome of what it is that happened to us and what we're able to take away from it, the way that we're able to learn and grow from it, the way that we can possibly help somebody else learn and grow from it. Again, talking about the dads in the car, you know, that one dad is teaching that kid, like, this is how you respond into these situations. You get upset, you get mad, you start pointing blame on everything else. And then you have the other dad that takes it as an opportunity to teach and that's what he taught his son in that moment. Like, this is also how you can respond too. And it's so important, man. Again, we talk about it so many times. Being students of life, we can always learn. As long as we have breath in our lungs, there's always an opportunity for us to change our outcome and to learn from it, grow from it, and again, teach others how to do so as well.
Absolutely, man. There was power in, like, nah, I'm not going to let this affect me. I'm not going to be, I mean, it was the initial attack, being aware of the initial attack in the first place, you know, the ring light not working, and it was something really petty. So obviously there's going to be more situations to where I'm going to have to do a little bit more thinking to get to find a solution. But, you know, laughing it off was the first indication of being aware of what was going on, and then being like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I think I think that is a necessary step to be aware of as well, because if you're thinking about, like, wow, what just happened, you know, like this, I'm not going to be able to record. You're not thinking about a solution. And even if you find yourself trying to figure out a solution, because there are going to be times to where it's like, man, what am I going to do? At least you're in that thought cycle of trying to find a solution. So me finding a solution, there was power in that. There was like a feeling of triumph, you know, a feeling of overcoming. Yep. And it was almost like an instant level up, you know what I mean? And it was like, you just feel so much better about pivoting. You know, we don't panic, we pivot, about pivoting around or hurdling that obstacle versus like coming to the obstacle like a hurdle or whatever, and then turning around and be like, nah, I got to go back the other way. I just can't do it. Right. And,
sorry to interrupt. I was picturing like on track and field when you have the
exactly.
hurdles. I was literally picturing somebody running up to it and then running around the hurdle, and everybody being like, what the hell is he doing?
Right. That's good though, but that's what a lot of us do, right? And then we're stuck in a feeling of disappointment, and now we're that much further from, you know, accomplishing that goal, or, you know, getting closer to our dreams, because being on the journey of your dreams it's just a different level feeling, and that's why they say to enjoy the journey. It feels
so good, man. It feels so good.
And I realized you can't enjoy the journey though if you're living somebody else's journey, or if you're what's the word I'm looking for? I'm botching it. If the life you're living isn't the journey for you, you know, whatever you're doing right now, like it's hard to enjoy something that you're not. You can't enjoy the journey if you're not enjoying what you're doing. Right. You know, so that's where it's like, well, how do you enjoy the journey? And it's like, well, first you got to just start with whatever it is that brings you passion, and that's why we're here, right? And doing so, and, you know, taking that risk, this life, you call it the student of life, but it's a game of life. You know, it's an adventure. We talk about Zelda, right? And speaking of Zelda, going down a rabbit hole, I was listening to a quote, and, you know, on this journey of healing, he talks about how a blade in order for a blade to get tempered, it has to go through the fire, right? And through that fire multiple times, and it's got to get smacked and beaten, and then it's got to get hammered, right? And that's essentially what life is like. And not to scare, the people out there. That's ultimately what we're going through right now. A lot of us are going through fires,
being forged through the fire.
Exactly. Everything happens for a reason.
That's it.
I think it's important to be aware of that, because everything is just making us a little bit stronger. And just thinking about that quote, what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. I mean, that there's a deeper meaning to that now, because there's things that we've gone through already that justify victories. A lot of us everyone goes through stuff. And we've gotten through it, right, every day, and we get through it. And so that's almost a pat on the back, you know what I mean? And going back to what you were saying as far as self-reflection, I think that's, a form of gratitude. That's something that I started doing before going to bed, is like, what did I learn today? And what was a blessing for today? And it allows you to be in the thought cycle of positive thinking and being grateful for the things that went well. Because if you do a pros and cons list, uh, the goods are gonna they're outweigh the bad. I'm sure majority of the time, you know. So having that self reflection, man, it's important. Like you said, bro, it's important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's also important to look at those wins too, and study like why things went the way that they did, and you can
That's a
learn from that too, right? We
absolutely.
talked about that before. It's not, and again, it comes back to what you choose to focus on and how you choose to focus on it. You can focus on the negatives in a way that is helping you grow from those things, and
Absolutely.
get better with dealing with them, or how to avoid them, or whatever the case is. But it's also good to reflect on the wins too, and not just gloat in that glory, but to kind of study that as well. Why did things go the way that they did? Was it because of things by happened chance, like things just kind of went good, and that's how it was? Or was it my mindset? Was it the way that I approached it? Was it the way that did I execute better because of my mindset? Sometimes we just kind of accept the wins, feel good about it, celebrate it, and move on from it without actually taking a look as to what was the recipe of success here, and how can I replicate that going forward? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have a question for you. So I know a lot of people of what people say. When things go wrong, that's where you find when your growth. You grow through the tough times is where you find the most growth, right? And is that because our energy is focused on what went wrong and then having to find a solution to what went wrong? Or could it be equally as impactful doing what you just said, not only taking those wins and finding out what you did well in and repeating that process, but also finding the things that you could have done better on, like what didn't go well and how do I do better in that, so ultimately my day is just going to be full of things that are productive or that were full of wins. How do you think, is that just a matter of focus of what we're focused on? Because can we find as much growth and lessons in our wins as much as we can in our losses?
I think it's a good balancing act, right? And again, it's all the matter of how you're focusing on those things, how you're focusing on the negatives, how you're focusing on the positives. I think there's probably more room for growth coming from studying the negatives with that mindset, than there is studying the positives. Because as we know, you can try to replicate something all you want. Odds are it's never going to go the exact same way. But I think it's just important to focus on those things, to know what can go right, how it can go right, you know what I mean? But also, again, on the flip side of that, be aware of what can go wrong, how it can go wrong, and how you're going to respond to it. You know what I'm
Exactly.
saying? Like,
Preparation.
so, well, yeah, exactly. Like, as you know, as a basketball player, there are some games where you can't miss a shot. You just can't miss. And so you start forming your game around your ability of making those shots. But there are some games, and your preparation work went into both of these games the exact same. There are some of those games where you just can't buy a bucket
Yeah,
for the life of you. So how do you respond? Do you get frustrated and continue to try to force those shots, or do you start looking at your teammates a little bit more and try to build them up a little bit? You know what I mean? Start playing the role player a little bit more as opposed to the leader of the leader in scoring, so to speak. You know what I mean? You got to be able to adjust on the fly, and being
absolutely.
aware of your capabilities, what you're capable of, and what you can do in response to each of those situations is the key. And that's why I think it's so important to focus on both the positives and the negatives, but not dwell on either one of them.
I absolutely love that. Mental preparation, that kind of goes back into what we talked about as far as perfect days, but in a different, on a different branch, in a different light, because we are going to fall, we are going to make mistakes, and we aren't going to do things well. And so if we have that expectation, hope for the best and expect the worst, then we're going to be more prepared for those obstacles that come in. And that kind of brought me to the result of, as you're continuing to analyze the losses and focus on, the things that went right and trying to, build habits around those things that went right, you can't lose, essentially. Right? Because a loss is just something to learn from, right? And so you can gain. It's just going to propel yourself forward. And the wins are just going to help you rep what went right, what went well, and how to smooth things out, and how to formulate a plan to optimize execution. And I love that. I love the way that you said that, being able to focus on and have that preparation on both sides of it. Because even for basketball, that's why I'm going to coach my kids on that, right? Because it's a mental approach. You're going to go into these games. You're going to prepare for the game, like prepare for life, like you're preparing for the game. But if you got to prepare for the game, knowing there's going to be uncertainty, you know what I'm saying, and knowing that I might fall, I might not shoot, like this, and there has to be some type of preparation going into it so you can find solutions around those obstacles. Ultimately, bro, success comes down to prepare, right? It's that one quote. If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. And that's been huge for me too. Finding that structure and creating a structure and building a routine every day, and having that mental that I pointed at you, having that mental or thought process of let's go into the day with expectation, because I think we lack in our expectation as well. But I think it's important to understand, like, that within that expectation, the enemy is going to be attacking. Our days aren't going to be perfect, but I think a lot of it has to do with belief in ourselves as well. A lot of us doubt our abilities to be successful, and I think it's important to start the journey of healing, because this life isn't, especially with AI. Like with AI, and like, oh my goodness, like iRobot coming to life for real is tangent, but I just lost my train of thought. Go ahead.
Man, I think you're right, man. In this day and age, obviously there's a lot more technology advancements going on than when we grew up, right? And I'm kind of old school in the sense that I'm not following that crowd that's heading in that direction, that's just accepting it or using it. And I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody that uses AI, ChatGPT, or anything like that, especially for those that are using it in ways to better themselves or better their lives.
There's always two sides of things, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. I know of people that have, businesses and stuff, and they use ChatGPT and ask it questions like, how do I, walk me through step by step how to make this sale or something like that, right? Or how to make a physical product or whatever the case is. And it can, come up with the resources that you need, different people that you can reach out to, or companies, or whatever the case is, and can kind of help you take the steps. But I also know people that aren't taking steps in their lives and just letting AI do it all for them, and this and that and the other thing, and they're not using it to advance themselves so much as they're using it to make their lives easier. And I get brought to, talking about iRobot, I even think of WALL-E. Do you remember the movie?
I haven't. Yeah, it was the robot, but there was no words, no dialogue, right?
No, because it was just a robot existing in a post-apocalyptic type world, and the people, the human beings that were in that world were, pardon my description, but these fat slobs that didn't do anything, and they just sat on these automatic chair things, and they had the chairs move them around, and the world was filled with junk. It was just wasted away because they allowed machines to just take over. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, man. Thinking of iRobot, thinking of The Matrix, thinking of Terminator, all these things that,
Eagle
AI,
Eye.
Yeah, Eagle Eye, everything. It's like, man, it was all bad in every single scenario, whatever. And I know these are just movies that we're referencing, but these are thoughts and ideas that came from
someone,
a certain level of reality.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot of that created, fiction come to reality. And it's not looking good. So in my opinion, I think the overall advancement of things like AI is just taking things away from us as human beings and making us lazier in a lot of aspects of life. You know what I'm saying? Instead of
Absolutely.
actually learning and doing things for ourselves, we're allowing these machines to do it for us. So where we don't have to learn. And again, some people are doing that for the betterment of themselves, frees up time for them to go and do other things, other aspects of their lives. So obviously, I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody that utilizes it, but for me personally, I'm not a fan of it. I would much rather learn the hard way, so to speak, and get my hands dirty in that aspect of things, as opposed to, just allowing something to do it for me. Because for me, if I were to just, like, for instance, this podcast, I do all the editing myself. You know what I mean? I could use, especially we use the app Riverside. I could allow Riverside to cut the clips for me, and it would free up my time. But the way my life is set up right now, I'm not freeing up time to go and do, to go hunting or to go fishing or to, go do other passions in life. I have other things that I got to work on. So, I'm just doing other things, or I'm going to end up being lazy and I'm going to be chilling on my phone or whatever the case is and not doing things. I don't know. It kickstarts something in me that I'm actually doing something, and I feel better about myself cutting these clips for myself.
Right. 'Cause you're the
I
one
feel
putting it.
good. Right. I'm the one putting in the work, the time, the energy, the effort, and then I'm getting, for the most part, I mean, so far, 100% positive feedback on the things that I'm doing with this.
Authenticity.
So, exactly, authenticity. That's the word that was eluding me. But so yeah, I went on a little tangent just now. I think that hit a little bit of a nerve with me talking about AI. I'm not a fan of it, man. I'm not a fan of it. Even getting to, like, you see these beautiful pieces of artwork, but you can tell it's fake. Like, you
Yeah.
can tell, like, but if somebody told you, like, somebody painted this, you're like, damn, somebody did that. Like, that's amazing. Like, that person has such a beautiful and wonderful talent. You have so much more of an appreciation for something when you know that somebody actually did it with their own mind, their own hands,
Right.
their own
Exactly.
creative being. I don't know, man. I see some of these things and it's just like, man, get out of here with that.
How do you think what's going on in the world right now affects the confidence of the self-esteem and the confidence of, like, just how, let me rephrase this, with people feeling so, hurt and pain and broken, trying to figure out a way, does AI help that or does it make it worse? Because there's a lot of deception, right? We're on here to try and heal, and we're always, as far as, looking at the next person, oh, they've got this, they've got that, and it's not me. Now that it's coming out of my mouth, I see that amplifying or multiplying the problem, because there's no authenticity, and so something may not be what it seems. And a lot of people take envy in that, or there's jealousy, and then there's like, okay, well, my life is not like theirs. Initially, before AI came out, this is how a lot of people looked at themselves, right? They've got what I want. Why me? Only if I had that. If I could do this, if I was taller.
Must be nice.
Yeah, exactly. How do we navigate through that? How do we navigate through AI trying to become better people?
I mean, again, it's a matter of how it's being utilized, and I see more people using it to make themselves lazy, whether they want to admit it or not, as opposed to people that are actually using it to make their lives better.
Yeah.
I'm just not seeing it to that degree, and I'm not saying it's not out there. Just because I'm not seeing it doesn't mean anything. Who am I in that degree? I don't know, millions of people. You know what I mean? So it's not like I can look at the statistics personally and say, yeah, this is what's going on. But just my personal opinion, from what I see, I would much rather see, a movie be made by people that are really putting their own thoughts, feelings, and emotions behind making a character come to life, as opposed to somebody just typing something in on the computer and having that computer make it come to life. It's not the same. And like you said, authenticity, I think people are going to pick up on that in the long run. I think people are going to realize,
absolutely.
you have that first shock and awe factor where, oh, wow, this is beautiful. I can't believe how great this is. But when it really comes down to it, man, I think of like movies and stuff like that. The movies that really jump out to me is the people that were in it and how they went about making it. You know what I mean? I think of
The craft.
I mean, the craft that went into it, right? I can list off a bunch of actors off the top of my head that the either the movies that they were in or the characters that they played in these movies, it like changed my perception of things, or changed the way I felt about something, or I have such a deep appreciation because of it. You know what I'm saying? And we know who a lot of these actors and actresses are, but if it's just a computer, it's not as special. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. This is a poor example, but I just lost my train of thought. But I don't know, man. I'm not a fan of it overall. I think it's taking away from our creative minds, our creative.
Absolutely.
We are creative beings, right?
Yeah.
When you break us down to our primitive selves, go back to like the Stone Ages and stuff like that. I even think about where things are now in our current day and age, and in the progression of human beings up to this point. We created all of that, but if we get to a point where we just have computers creating for us, what are we doing? What are we doing with ourselves?
Exactly. And I think, but I think that, and the reason why I ask, because I think that's, really important, because if we're not in a creative state of mind, then we can never become our best selves. We will never live out the life that God intentionally had for each and every one of us, and I think that I'm not sure, I can't call it, but I think that's going to be even more so important for people to come on, connect, because I'm not sure if AI could be authentic. Like there's something something spiritual, right, about human beings that robots can't replicate. I think it's going to be important to be your true self, to be vulnerable, right, to try and connect, as I mentioned, because of the deception and just the rise in deception, and that's just going to cause more confusion. I think that's something to be aware of as we're trying to continue to become better selves of what's actually going on, because I think it's just going to isolate a lot more people and to confuse a lot more people. And I just believe in humans, man. I believe in God's creation. I believe in the ability for all of us to be great, and because we all have that ability, we all have that capability. And so I guess the message, right, for today is to continue to try and live in positivity and be on a journey of healing. And within that journey of healing, understand that there's going to be rocky roads. We talk about that blade being tempered. But one way, it's a do or die type situation, man. Like if we don't do anything, we're going to die not doing anything. And, if we're going to go through the fire, whether we like it or not, it's dependent on whether we decide to be a blade or I guess a stick, right? You know what I mean? Because, right? Because at the end of the day, that time is going to come. And I always like to refer to it as Jumanji, because I feel like life is a game of Jumanji, and the game is being played whether we like it or not, and so I think it's important for us to get into the game and try and and do it, man, because the time is ticking, bro, and it's just not fun. It's just not fun to not being happy. It's just it's really not. It's really not, and I'm feeling like my thoughts are a little bit scattered today, but I think that's something I just want to tell the audience and whoever's listening, that like there's an option, there is a way. Being happy is a possibility. What you're going through is a trick. What you're going through can be changed. What you're going through can be reversed. It can be converted. You know, it's just a way of focus. It's just a way of, you know, interpreting what's happening. And again, I appreciate this podcast for being on here. It's been a while since we've been on here to connect, release, because we got so much going on, and everybody else has so much going on. And I just would like to be more aware of that, you know, because we get caught up in our everyday lives, just like we talked about, but being more open-minded about other people's feelings and what they're going through, especially, you know, when we're out there in the world. You know, how can we be better people to others? How can we serve others? You know, and I'm still working on that as well. This is just me, you know, coming to the forefront with our talks right now and being thought provoked, right? Yeah. But life is crazy, man, and memories and moments are, you know, everything that is the only things that we have and the only things that we can take with us, and so it's important to stay within those, man. But what else, my brother?
I mean, I love that you said that, because I feel like the more that we connect with other people, the more that we not only learn about other people, we learn about ourselves. You know, a lot of people, and I was just talking about this with my previous guest, shout out to Dr. Moley. But, you know, you don't realize sometimes how much you can positively affect others. You don't realize how others can learn from you the same way that you can learn from them. You know, a lot of people feel like they don't hold any kind of value when it comes to other people. And that's why it's so important to connect with other people and network. Like, you never know how much just meeting somebody can change your life. And you never know how much just meeting somebody can change their lives. You know what I'm saying? So,
absolutely.
And that has such a profound positive effect on us that we don't realize going into it. You know what I mean? Everybody, like you said, we are all going through something every single day of our lives, whether it's positive and negative. We're all going through something. And there are a lot of people out there that haven't gone through what it is that you went through, or are about to go through what it is that you went through, or are currently going through something that you've gone through in the past, and you could help them get through that. Yeah. And the feeling that you get when you help somebody, man, it's a feeling that, I mean, you really can't describe it. It's such an uplifting feeling that almost kind of validates your existence in a lot of ways. Like,
absolutely, man. I was going to say, cut that clip. Like what you said is heavy, man, because that's where a lot of us don't feel adequate. Don't feel like we're lacking purpose, right? Don't feel worthy, right? And that's it, man, because that imposter syndrome, you know, that we all suffer from. Mm-hmm. And our experiences, and I'm still, you know, adopting this into downloaded this into my subconscious as well, is that your experiences qualify you to help somebody else, regardless of where they're at. Your information, whether it's a little or a lot, can change someone who hasn't gone through that experience.
That could be that missing piece for what they have going on. And as soon as you talk about it, or they hear you talk about it, it's like, oh man, that's what I've been doing wrong, or that's what I've been missing. And then boom, you help them get through it, and you didn't even realize that you could do that. You know, I don't know how many times you and I have had conversations where one of us will say kind of what we deem ourselves a relatively simple, you know, a simple statement or whatever, but the other one of us was like, damn, that just blew my mind, type of thing. You know what I mean? That gave me chills. And all we're doing is just talking about our experiences.
Right.
You know what I mean? Exactly. It's not like we're you know, performing brain surgery and I'm telling you how I performed it and you're like, damn, I didn't even know you were capable of doing that type of thing. I'm like, no, man, I just went through something and I told you my thoughts and my feelings going through it, or my reflection of the situation at hand after the fact. And again, that's helped you, that's helped me. I've had other conversations with other people in the same thing, you know what I mean? Especially when we're going through something, you're in the heat of the fire, you're in the heat of the moment, you know, you got the smoke coming up all around you. You can't see everything else past that, right? Especially you got that fire heated up right in front of you, you got the smoke in your eyes, you can't see that far. But if you have somebody that's on that other end and they're kind of fanning the smoke away from you and they're like, hey man, right over here, it's like, oh man.
I absolutely love that. I absolutely love that. Somebody else fanning the fog. Yeah, I'm over here, kind of. bridging that connection, like,
100%.
closing the gap. I absolutely love that. And
I mean, think
analogies
about
are
every single guest that we've had come on here. There's been at least one point or another where you and I, or both of us, have been like, "Say that again?
right.
What?" You know what I mean? So, and again, we're just having conversations with people.
Yeah,
That's
man.
it.
That just reminds me, we're limited by our experiences. We talk about the connecting and have a perspective and being able to learn from so many different people. We we base life off of the experiences that we've had, and there are a billion different perspectives and experiences that we can pick up on. There's so much that we can learn. Well, I talked about this the other day. We were talking about it the other day with as far as abundance, and I'm starting to tap into a different level of abundance because there's you can't live long enough to absorb all the information there is to absorb in the world,
Right.
which is why spiritual money is just a thought. There's more money to be made. There's all of us have a piece of the pie because there's you can't run out of it. You can't make more than there is. It's just an infinite amount of everything that you can't max anything out. And it's a crazy thought, and that's helped me open up my mind a little bit more to what's possible, because there's so many cultures, so many different ways of doing things, so many religions, so many states, so many accents, so many countries. Like there's so many people, and like there's just different ways of the way people have experienced life.
Right.
And so that's
right.
just, I mean, we have to stay open-minded, and it's crazy to think how limited we are in our thinking based off of our experiences when there's so much to learn. There's
Right.
so much that we can experience, and experience is probably the fastest way, to growth, success, and happiness. So if we can
Absolutely.
open up our mind and, connect, give somebody our word, someone, like you said, just that little bit, that's even got me hyped up. It really got me, motivated and encouraged again, because just one sentence, one hive, one act of being in, my goodness, I'm losing my train of thought. One act of kindness can change someone's day, and it provides more openings and more connections, and there's just so much more to life, bro. There's just so much more to life that we're not experiencing, and we won't be able to experience it all. And that's how much life there is to live.
Right. Yeah, again, it's like having those horse blinders on, and you're just kind of going through, focusing on what you have right in front of you, man. You're missing all the opportunities around you, And I love how you talked about, there's so many different places, so many different countries, so many different cultures, even different states. You know what I mean? And how fascinated we are by people that are from somewhere else. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Even within the United States. You hear somebody has an accent and they're from down south or whatever. You're like, damn, where are you from? They're like, oh,
Right,
I'm from
exactly.
Georgia or something like that. You're like,
Yeah.
what? You're from Georgia. What's it like over there? This and that and the other thing. Especially, like us, you're from California living in Texas, right? I'm from Massachusetts, grew up in California, back in Massachusetts. People find that out about me and they're fascinated. And for me, I'm just kind of like, yeah, that was just my life. That's just what I
Exactly.
went through. But they're like, man, you moved to California when you were 8 while you were from Massachusetts. What was that like? I remember when I first moved to California, for some reason, I had a real thick Boston accent. Everybody was having me say things like car, park, water, car, park, water, all these different things. Say this, say that, and people were just so fascinated by just how I spoke and describing how things were for me, out here. And then when I moved back out here, people were like, "Oh, you're from California? What was this like? What was that like? This and that and the other thing." People are fascinated by something that they haven't experienced themselves. And in this day and age, especially with technology, not necessarily talking about AI, but, social media and stuff like that, we have unlimited access to those different types of places, those different types of people, and we're not utilizing it in that way, right? We're using it to kind of judge people, or to sit back and be keyboard warriors talking shit online and this and that and the other thing, instead of using it to connect. And I'm using that as a blanket statement.
No, but that's it.
A lot of people do use it to connect, right? But I feel like a majority isn't. They're just kind of going through, scrolling, this and that and the other thing, and not really taking the time to really try to understand what it is that they're seeing, why they're seeing it, and what it's like for those other people, and to actually learn from them, as opposed to just sitting back and judging. I know none of us want to sit back and have people just judge us, especially people we don't know. Connect, network, talk, have conversations, open up, pun intended, release.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to be vulnerable. Allow other people to be vulnerable with you. And man, the sky is the limit from how much we can learn from them.
Yeah, man. And ultimately that's the problem though, right? Is that fear of being judged. It's the fear of feeling inadequate, feeling like you're not enough. It starts with self-esteem, and within that self-esteem, hurt people. People are in pain, release pain. You exude pain. It comes out one way or another. And that's ultimately why we're divided as a unit in the first place. And it's just like you said, being able to be vulnerable, knowing that we're all going through something, will allow us to, okay, well, I mean, first we have to stop being judgmental and opinionated, right? But then
Right.
if we have that understanding of like somebody else has gone through what you've gone through, and our experiences have, jaded, our thought process in some circumstances as to why, why we aren't that way, pain, feeling broken. There's a lot of healing that needs to go on. People don't know that they need healing. As we already know, those negative emotions can have a bigger hold than we can ever imagine. And it's like there's blindfolds, and we've been blinded. It's like somebody bagged us. And like I like to look at it as an orange, on this journey of healing. It's like God has just continued to peel like that layer of skin that's been covering our vision of what's possible for us, and it's ultimately again why people can't be vulnerable, is because there's too much judgment out there. There's not enough connecting. There's a lot of disbelief in what's possible. There's a lot of disbelief in ourselves, low self-esteem, low confidence. So, but that's why we have this podcast, right? So we can release, because the release is part of, the healing process, right?
That's a part of the growth.
Yeah, it's the part of the growth. A lot of us need healing, man. And the healing will allow you to open up your mind and to see the possibilities of a greater life, of a better life, a life with more quality. Like I said, there's so much to experience in life that we have to get to experiencing. Otherwise, we're gonna take it to the grave and wonder what if, right? And
I had somebody say this quote to me, and I said something along the lines of like, don't go through life saying what if, and having that regret, right? And the response that I got was, I would much rather, instead of saying what if, I'd much rather say, well, now I know.
Yes.
And that for me, it was like, damn, it was such a simple concept, such a simple quote, but it was like, man, that's so true.
Isn't
it? That was such a fear of mine growing up, was, the what if, right? But saying it in a negative way, as opposed to taking that opportunity to learn and saying, well, now I know.
Whoa, that's hefty. Because the thought of what if is haunting, but the what if also holds us back from taking risks.
1,000%.
That's a crazy thought to think. Now I know, because now there's a lesson learned. You gained knowledge from that experience, that risk, and that kind of leads me to another thought that I heard yesterday. And oh my goodness, risk. we take risk. We literally take risk every day. We take a risk when we don't do something. We take a risk of not knowing what's possible on the other side. We take a risk on, like possibilities and opportunities when we don't do stuff that are in alignment with our dreams. I absolutely love that thought. That's got my wheels turning as far as, now I know.
Right.
Because we're meant to experience. We're meant to be on a journey of experience, an adventure of life, learning more and more and more about ourselves, becoming more, right? Becoming more. And I've learned from Myron Golden, becoming, allows there's a doing in that part. And when we do more, become more, we have more. I kind of lost my train of thought, but it's that's a good one. Well, now I know. I'm gonna write that one down. Well, now I know. Wow,
it's big, man. So again, look, we look what we would have missed out on if you would have, succumbed to the attack that came upon. Whether it's chalked up as a big one or a small one. Well, my ring light went out. Can't record. And the negative effect that could have had going forward. How much that could have affected your mood, and then in turn your interactions with your family for the rest of the day. And then in turn, all right, so today's Father's Day, right? That could have that could have traveled all the way to next Father's Day. A year from now, that could have stuck in your kids' heads, your wife's head. Like, well, last year wasn't good because, Kyle wasn't able to record on the podcast, and, it just kind of had a damper on the day type of thing. It could have had a long lasting negative effect. And I know that's kind of a big, what if in that regard. But again, shows the power and the testament to staying positive and finding those solutions, as opposed to succumbing to the attacks that we get on us, and finding a way to move forward regardless. And then look at the conversation that we just had. 50 something minutes just flew by, and the thoughts and the feelings that were provoked from within those 50 minutes. And now that's going to travel forward. That's going to translate to the rest of our day, and how positive and good we're going to feel.
Yeah, that's another step closer, another level up, another moment of growth. And I remembered what I was going to say about risk.
Nice.
When we make choices in our life, obviously we hope for those choices to turn out positive. And a lot of the times they don't. We put ourselves in a feeling of regret, an emotion of regret, wishing that we never made that decision. But we made the decision not knowing what the outcome was going to be. You know what I mean? Exactly. It's like, because out here on the freeway, there's frontage. There's like a side road that you can take versus getting on the freeway, and there's traffic on the freeway. Sometimes I take the side road. Boom, or the side road is going to be faster, or at least I think it's going to be faster. But then I take the side road, and
everybody
then there's more
else
traffic.
Had that same thought.
But now there's traffic on the side road. It's like, man, I wish I would have just stayed on the freeway. But that's a lesson learned. I just learned something new. Like, well, now I know, right? I mean, that may be a bad analogy, but the whole point I'm making is own our choices, own the decisions that we make. Because for good or for better or worse, we're going to learn something from that. We're going to get something from that. Every choice that we make is a risk, but it's also an opportunity to learn from that choice, and that's something I need to do for myself as well, because it's like I always do that. It's like, man, why did I do this? Why did I go this way? Right? And it was like, I wish I would have done
the negative.
Exactly. I wish I would have done something different, instead of being like, well, now I know, how to be better, or what to do next. Learning from those failures. Mm-hmm. So that reminded me of that. Exactly like you said, thought provoked, man. New awareness, new realizations, new opportunity, new growth, continuing to build, sharpening iron, tempering blades, right?
Yeah, legit.
So
legit. And again,
sure.
it comes from connecting.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have gained these awarenesses that we've gained, these perspectives, by just sitting back, not having these conversations. That's not how it works. For some people maybe, but for the most part, at least in my life, your life, we've gained so much more since we started this podcast and having these conversations and connecting with other people in the 2 years, just over 2 years that we've been doing this, than I can say that I've gained in the 10 years prior. You know what I mean? Like, and
Yeah.
it's all about connecting. So I encourage those that are listening, that are watching, that are observing, to reach out, come on here and connect with us. I guarantee you're either one, going to learn something, or two, you're going to teach us something. And either way, you're going to feel good. I promise you that. So let's do it. Let's connect. Let's grow.
Let's connect. Tap in.
So with that being said, I appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll see you next time.